Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to show you how I go from this basic train track design to a fully MILS plated layout. It was a challenging process, I did have a couple of frustrating redesigns along the way, but I am delighted with the final result. After I completed embedding the track, I discussed the cliff and the Santa platform prototype before wrapping things up with a discussion focusing on integrating the castle and dragons into the winter village. As I get started on this project, the first decision for me was plate or tile on the tracks themselves. I did decide to tile off the top of the tracks instead of using plate because I think this just looks nice and smooth and it looks a little bit different from the MILS plate itself. In my mind, this is sort of packed snow from the train going over it. Base plate itself is nothing particularly fancy. It's basically just a nice big cave in the middle there where the track is going to sit, and everything, of course, is connected here and here, so this is one solid structure. 8 studs here for this connection to go onto, and the 8 studs down here for this connection to go onto. After a very long evening, I finally finished the first curve embedded in the MILS track. The straight was, of course, well, straightforward. It wasn't that hard to do. And I sort of did like the way that the straight ended up looking, and it is, I think, the way I want to do it. Most of the sets and things that I put on will probably be put on top of the MILS plate, so they will sit basically flush with the tile. And then I can use some of the rounded pieces maybe just to blend this in a little bit more as it comes together. Let me just show you what I mean. So I could do something kind of like that with all these curved pieces that I got from the pad wall on certain areas of the track to just sort of make it look like the snow has been built up at the side. Unfortunately, after spending hours making this, which I have to say was far more frustrating and difficult than I thought it was. It's one of those things when you watch YouTubers do it, they make it look really simple and you're like, oh, it's just you put some parts together and it'll look good. It's really hard. Even after getting past the frustration of the actual work of doing it, in the end, I did actually like the result, and it's mostly because I've got the flex track in here because it doesn't give you a uniform tiling. Even with it included, you see here you've got the 1x and then the 2x, and then the other side you've got the 1x and the 2x just to kind of make it fit properly. It doesn't look good. I'm not really happy with it. And the final thing was every time I took this out to sort of make an adjustment and put it back in, it just felt like the track is not as stable as it should be. I feel like there's a lot of tension in the parts here and go around this corner. And overall, I sort of left this, when I finished this a couple of nights ago, thinking I don't like this. I want to reevaluate how to do it. It's one thing I feel a little bit stupid for not realizing when I was planning this out a few weeks ago was that if I just sacrifice having the connectors in the corner, giving me 4 studs back at each end and only moving in 2 studs, I can actually make a perfect circle that will fit beautifully on 3 base plates. And I can use 4 curves there and then 2 pieces of straight track to finish the module. So I'm going to do exactly what I did below, and that is put bricks underneath all the straights and then 2 layers of plate underneath each of the curve cross sections. What I'm also going to do is actually put a little bit of tile underneath. I'm not going to do a full ballast because I just don't think I have the parts to achieve that, and I don't think it's going to be necessary when I actually am able to do the 2 and the 1 throughout the whole of the curve and make it look a little bit more filled in. But what I did notice on this version is I do need to put a little bit more, maybe a bit of plate in the middle for these cross sections so it doesn't look quite so empty, because you can just sort of see all the way down to the base plate and it is a little far. And I think while I'm redoing the whole thing anyway, I may as well just put a strip of white plate to cover up those gaps. Here's one piece of curved track with sort of 3 ideas put together to show you what I can probably do to help eliminate the gap that I have here without actually properly ballasting it, because I don't have the parts for that. So option 1 is I have made a little sort of unit here. It's just 2 2x6s connected with a little bracket there, so I can, put them together at an angle and it'll hold together. The only issue with this is there's actually no way this is properly tacked down to the track itself. It is the most comprehensive in the sense that I can move it along the rail, so there's absolutely no gap between the plate here and the rest of the track, especially when it's tiled off. that does look pretty good. So the gap that does exist is actually underneath this piece, which would be covered up. The other option I have is to actually achieve it being properly tacked down, and that would be using this 2x6 with a stud on it. The stud will connect to the tile, and you just pop it on there, and it's actually connected. So you can play around with it, and it won't fall apart. Now, actually, this is holding pretty well right now, but a few tests I've done, it can sort of fall off, and I don't know how well that'll work with 4 curves connected. The only issue with that, of course, once you've got an anchor point here, you do develop the gap in the piece. So it sort of goes against the whole point of what I'm trying to do, although this does look significantly better than if there was no piece there at all. Another option I sort of played with was when I was trying to stud that down was I could actually just do a layer of studs here too, and there's another one in there to tack it into place. And that would add a little bit more texture and a little bit more depth. It could look really good. I haven't decided yet if it actually does look good or not. It's one of those ones where I think I need to see it in the whole track to decide if I actually like it. And if, like, I'd prefer this look to the sort of basically 2-plate down gap that is inevitably going to happen between the train track and then with the tile on top. And this really sort of limits what that gap looks like. I don't think I have a better way of achieving this. I wonder if a 1x4 tile would work. Let me try that. Oh, I think I have a winner. I think I like this. And I don't mind using extra tile because I got a whole bucket of them from the pad wall. But that looks really good. I'm really happy with that. Maybe this is too much tile, but I like the cleanliness of it. It's going to look really beautiful, and especially when I compare it to the straight track, which is just solid tile. I think this should look pretty good next to it. Well, we'll see. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go with this. Build up my plates like that. Take apart the one I already did and see what the track looks like with that. And hopefully it will be less painful to embed it as it was before. Now you'll see that the amount of gap is slightly different for each of the parts here. And that's just to do with the angle of the curve and how well it would fit. The size of the gap, though, doesn't really seem to bother me. Pretty much it's biggest at the end of the curve here, and then the gap gets smaller as we get closer to the connection point at the other end. I think it looks okay, though. You can hardly even see beneath it. You can see a little bit of gray of the track, but it sort of just adds like depth in a sort of sense, like it's like a shadow rather than showing the track itself. So I think that'll look really good. So I'm going to go and fill all this in, tile it off, and then do this 3 more times, and finally the track will be done, although I do need to correct the straights. Other thing, I said this early in the video, and I'm so frustrated at myself for not realizing this, but because the track is just lying on top of the brick, so the connectors can actually be in their original position, and it will connect beautifully to the other plates, and there's no issue there. I feel a little bit silly for not figuring it out, but originally when I was planning this, I wasn't going to put it on a brick. I was probably just going to lay it like maybe 1 plate up or straight onto the base plate. So that's probably why I didn't have that in my mindset that I could do this. But then when I decided I was going to do it a brick up, well, it's pretty obvious. So before I start filling everything in, just want to show you the underlaying tile that I put down. These are just strategically placed so that the plate underneath the track has something to rest on. I didn't bother putting jumpers or anything in to tack it down. It didn't really seem necessary. The actual track itself, this is how it looks on this side, and then on the back, just to show you what I put together, it's basically just a layer of white plate to create that effect, and then a small 2x3 plate just there, so it's raised up exactly where it needs to be, and that's what's going to rest on the tiles. It pretty much was the first piece on the curve that's pretty loose. It's not really well tacked down because of the angle of that area, whereas here it actually snaps into place. So really all I needed to do was to connect these 2 pieces at the edge here to form a sort of stable unit that wouldn't then pop out. Obviously it's not as secure as being actually attached to this in some way, but it's good enough for what I need to do. And then you can just come around and take this whole unit and tack it into place. And there we go. So I've made 3 more of those. with just various different colors. I used some colors that I had left over. I don't think it'll matter. I was worried about like it reflecting off the white, but I think it'll be so minor it's not worth it. And then it just sort of uses up some of these pieces that I won't use. And they all look exactly the same like that. So basically I have 4 of these right now. I'm now going to go and fill in this as best I can with the parts that I have and then tile off the edges. And then my train track will be done. I'm absolutely thrilled with how clean this looks. I know it doesn't look like much, and it's not really a lot to show for a week's worth of work, but for me this was quite an accomplishment. So you'll notice that down here, these 2 curves are really well filled in. There's hardly any gaps. Whereas the back here, they're sort of half finished because the parts at the back here are going to be underneath the cliff, and so you won't see them. So I didn't bother wasting parts on doing that. A lot of it was really just trying to conserve 1x3 plate because I have very few of them left. So I think that's roughly where it's going to stop, because my plan for the tunnel is going to be to start where these 2 base plates meet so that the cross section of the tunnel will be in this unit at the back and it won't encroach on the neighboring base plate. We'll get to the tunnel plans in just a few moments, or just after I have a look at my beautiful track. Another thing I sort of did to fill in those gaps was I used a lot of the 1x1 white studs just in the areas between the track and the plate, just to raise it up a couple of studs, just so that the gap in there wasn't quite as extreme. I don't know how well it comes across on camera, but in person it really does make it look so much better than if it was just straight down to the base plate. I've also sort of filled it in, like, so the gaps at the edges, so when you see into the plate, you can see studs rather than just straight down to the base plate as well. And I think the overall effect of that was worth the part usage and time to create it. Now, I know my gaps around here, although they're pretty tight, they're not perfect, and it's just down to what parts I had in my inventory, which weren't exactly perfect or planned. It was just trial and error to make that work. If you've seen my channel before, you'll know that my tables here are custom and they aren't exactly the greatest piece of craftsmanship there's ever been in the world, but my friend and I are proud of them. But to fill in these gaps at the side, I've just have some custom sized base plates that I've also MILS plated, but I've only kept the Technic pins on the edges here so they'll connect to each other rather than trying to line them up with the main base plates. If I feel like I want to do that, then I can of course just add them into there to make them come together. I've got a few more of these little modules I need to make. There's one example missing over there, and then a couple down here at the front. Got the app all lined up. Let's just hit go and see what happens. Woo! Here it goes. Yes! Oh yeah, that runs so much better than last year. This was absolutely totally worth it. And in reverse. Woo! I could watch this all day, but I really should get started on planning at that mountain. So I pretty much decided that I want the cliff to run along the edge here and not in any way infiltrate what will be the base plate here. There will be the other half base plates over here to help with the blending down the other side, but I just want it to be like a separate module, so I'll have to sort of carefully contemplate how to do that. So I put the tram pretty much in the cross section of where the arch is going to be. And I've mocked up a little prototype of the archway, which is 10 bricks high, then the arch unit, and a couple of plates just to hold it together. And then if I place that right at the intersection of those base plates, I don't have any issues with the tram coming through. It doesn't hit right here, which is what I was sort of worried about as it comes around that tight corner. I could, of course, just move it over one, I think, and it should still make good clearance in both directions. So I have a little bit of wiggle room. I might move it over to there actually, just so I can have the 3 studs at this side. So I think the design here is pretty nice, having the rock set back every time. It gives you a few more studs here at the front without losing anything in the depth part here for the actual Santa sets. They will be in the dark bluish gray. I just have the dark tan on hand right now to figure out exactly what I want to do. So the same design can be used at the side. In fact, it could just be straight if I didn't want to get these studs back. And what's nice about this is it doesn't infiltrate on the base plate that will be here. That can just be a lot of blending work, but doesn't actually need to be connected to this module. So this is a sort of really quick and easy way to get a cliff And of course, this can kind of set back another stud as well if I wanted to do a little bit more blending work right here where the arch actually is. For blending, there will be plenty of slopes, maybe an ice waterfall, and a few rock climbers I think would really add to the storytelling in this area as well. To make the archway a little bit more interesting, I think I've decided on this design using masonry bricks, 3 white ones at the bottom, and then topped off with the dark bluish gray. Unfortunately, these have never been on the pad wall for me when I've been there, so I'm going to have to order a few more to make sure that both sides of the entrance look the same. The back of the platform is definitely in the prototype stage. At the back here, we have 16 by 16 plates. These are just the colors the head lying around, and then they're on these 2 pieces of scaffolding support. There is a lot of height between the tram and the top of this plate, and that is not just for clearance, but also just so that the Sansa sets are sort of predominant on top of the Winter Village. Now, I do have a structural issue, and that is I really would like there to be a support here where these 2 base plates meet. Unfortunately, there's a track in the way. Now, this is obviously me just throwing it together. This one, I don't even think the support here is straight. Just to sort of get an idea of how it might actually look. But that is going to be a concern to have enough structure here. Even this one that has 4 posts holding it together doesn't feel super supportive, like I can bend it in the middle. So I'll probably put some extra supports in here. I wonder if this is the way to do it, and if anyone has some better structural ideas, I'm all ears. Of course, I have more brick and I could fill in gaps if I need to. I probably will order some more of these, but in case I run out, that would be an option. But this just seemed like a elegant, quick way of getting a lot of height and support for the plates. So I've crudely made a prototype to sort of get an idea of how I'm going to blend the top of the rock work into these main plates at the back. And it's about 3 bricks here, and then a plate. And there's 4 studs here, and it will be out towards about 10 studs by the time you get out to the front panel here to give me plenty of space to work with. Now, if I do decide that I want more space stud-wise here, I can, of course, change the rock work so that it comes further forward, and I get those studs back up here, which might be needed. I think Santa's post office will fit on 20 studs. I actually need to double check that. It's going to be quite important to my whole plan, because I think the post office is going to be in the middle, and then the Elf Club house would be at the side, and then the other side would be Santa's house on the other base plate. But there's plenty of room here. I mean, that's going to be 3 16 by 16, and I still have even more space here. So it feels like a lot of space towards the back of that. It might move over a little bit at the rock panels here. I don't think I really spaced this out well enough. I was just sort of getting an idea of how this might look so I know what to order. But generally speaking, I'm going to have 3 16 by 16s at least per base plate for all the Santa's work. I am encouraged by the fact that I do have 3 bricks here to play with. That was really going to help with sort of blending from the tops of these little cliff pieces to the main buildings that are going to sit up here. I think that's going to give me some opportunities for some different textures throughout the cliff. They're not all necessarily going to look the same. And it's obviously going to depend a lot on what buildings are there and then maybe what needs to get blended into the rock work. I could see this archway being the hardest part for me. It's going to be the most part intensive to go from here all the way up to there. But that's a challenge, and I have a lot of bricks in this color, so I should be able to at least construct something. It may not be perfect, but then that's what next year's Winter Village is for. So overall, I think I know what I need to order. Some of these base plates, some of these supports, more rock panels, masonry bricks, and of course a bunch of slopes to help work all that together. While I wait for the gray versions of these to arrive to finish off my mountain, I'm first going to tackle what I'm going to do about the castle area in my Winter Village. The castle area will be this part at the front here. I'd like it to not take up more than 1 base plate deep, just due to the fact that I'm now 2 base plates into what was supposed to be the water area. Now at the front here, you'll see, we've got that nice, I think it's dark azure is the name of this color, which doesn't really match what the base plate is doing. I am going to put this on a MILS plate just for structural integrity, but what I think I'll do with that I'm going to do with most of my Winter Village buildings is just create sort of tacked down areas so it can rest on top of tiles and jumpers, just to have its spot rather than embedding it into a base plate. Here's just a quick view at all the interior details in the castle, which is kind of another reason why I would like it open, just so we can see all of this, and add some nice storytelling as well with more minifigures, some animals, and just have that transition here into the Winter Village area So I think a lot of these base plates at the bottom I might have to change out. Again, it might be something that I sort of tackle harder next year and just kind of go with it this year. Next thing I'm going to do is build the 2 towers that will go either side, and that will end up covering from side to side along those blue base plates, which I will MILS plate and make it match the height of the Winter Village. So getting the castle organized and put it in that place is what I'm going to do next, and then I have to set up an epic scene with the fire dragon and the ice dragon. Maybe that's my Winter Village done, just an ice dragon, a fire dragon, fighting in front of a castle with a winter tram going around. What do you think? No, I'm kidding. If you're excited to see how the Castle Dragon Winter Village turns out, show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. As always, your comments and suggestions are invaluable to me, so please share your thoughts on the Tunnel Cliff Santa area, especially regarding the structural challenges I'll be facing. I can't express how eager I am to hear your ideas. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.